posters up on my wall. I did things to try and make this look as decent as possible, but I don't have a real camera, so we'll see how this goes. My name's Victoria. I created this channel as a way for me to just talk about movies because I feel like I don't really have anybody who I can do that with on a consistent basis. So this is just gonna be somewhere where I can dump my creative thoughts and opinions about things. So today I was thinking, and well, not today, I've had this idea for a while now, let's not kid ourselves. This video took way longer to research and prepare for than I had initially anticipated, but you know, it was well worth it. It was a good use of my time because the world is ending, so anything is a good use of anybody's time at this point. So you wouldn't know this about me because this is my first video, but I freaking love Tim Burton movies. His movies have been with me through my entire childhood, and now at the still clueless age of 20, they're still in my life, and they still bring me a lot of joy, even the ones that I don't really get down with that much. But I went on Wikipedia, the most knowledgeable site that you could ever get any of your information from, and found his 20 directorial films that he's done, except for one, but I'll get to that when I get to that. From 20 being the one that I don't really mess with that much, but I still respect it because filmmaking is hard, and all the way down to number 1, which is my ride or die. Will stick with this movie till play it at my funeral. Play the movie. Just don't even talk about me. Just play this movie and y'all can go home. With his second most recent film that he's done, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Yay. Y'all, I really wanted to love this movie. I sincerely wanted to love this movie with all of my heart. I really did, because I read the first book and am a huge fan of it, and that's why I wanted to love the movie. And I hate being one of those people that's like, the movie wasn't like the book, so it wasn't good. That's not what I mean. It's just that just let me explain. Please just let me. Jake, who moves in with his grandfather in Wales, and he basically discovers an island where all of these children live with their caretaker, and these children are called peculiars, and they each have a power. So there's a boy who has bees inside of him, and there's a girl who can make plants happen, and there's a little girl who's super strong, and then you have our main girl who has fire powers, and there's another little girl who can levitate. They all just have their own thing going on. It's very, I hate to say that it's like X-Men, because not everything that's like a school with children with powers is X-Men, but it's like lo-fi X-Men. So one of the really tiny gripes I have about this movie is that they switched the power of the main girl with a different girl. The main girl, if you remember me saying before, she has fire powers in the book, and the little girl who's on the cover, her name is Olive, she has levitation powers, and they switched them in the movie for some reason, which is fine, but it didn't really do anything for the plot. Like, the plot was the same. It didn't add or take away anything, so I don't really understand why that was needed. Also, I feel like their powers in the book fit their personalities very well. Like, Emma is very hot-headed, and she just has a little bit of a temper, which is why fire powers were great for her. And then Olive was so tiny, I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be the youngest one in the book. And the fact that she can just float away at will if she doesn't wear these special shoes it's cute. It's cute. It makes sense for each of them. So it's oh, and they also, wow, remembering things, which made no sense. Really, Olive in the book, I think, is supposed to be like 6 or something, and the girl they got to play her in the movie she looks about my age. She looks like 20, maybe like late teens almost. So it just doesn't, like, the changes that were made just seemed nonsensical to me. And I think that's just because I read the book. Like, because if you... I get why people love this movie. There are probably people who have never read the book in their life and go see this movie and they love it because they just have no background on the source material, which is fine. And that's great. But it just sucks for people who read the book when you're set up to kind of know the basics of all these characters, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? They're different people now. All of the actors did phenomenal in this movie. Ava Green, girl, as Miss Peregrine, did great. Ava Green's great in everything, and sadly, 2 of her movies out of the 3 that she is involved with in Tim Burton land are in my least favorite movies. But I'll redeem it later. I'll redeem her later in her acting skills, I promise you. She's in my top 10 somewhere. Great playing Miss Peregrine. She plays mystical and all-knowing very well. She does that in a lot of her movies, and I love it. She's one of my favorite actors. She needs all the coin, all the awards, throw it at her from now on till the end of time, because she's that good. The movie has a lot of really strong people in it. There's Asa Butterfield, who is amazing on Sex Education on Netflix. If you've never seen it, you totally should, because it's great. We got Judi Dench is in there, Allison Janney's in there, Samuel Jackson's in this movie, and he is high-key terrifying. He's real scary, but it's good. I feel like the vibe of this film didn't really capture the essence of the book in a way, because the book, if you've never read it, it has black and white photographs of all the children in it and all of the settings and all of the people in the book. So it's very eerie, and that's why 15-year-old Victoria really, really liked this book, because it was different than a lot of YA novels in the sense that it was genuinely creepy, and it was almost, I don't want to say Victorian, well, it kind of was Victorian. It was a little Victorian-esque and creepy, and I liked it. And then I feel like, and this is not a gripe that I ever thought I would ever say about a Tim Burton film, it's too colorful. There's too many colors. It feels like you're in a circus. And I feel like that's not what this story is trying to do. But I also understand the economics of film, and that they probably wanted to sell this to children and get children to come and see it. So they couldn't really make it too scary. But a lot of the movies that he's made in my top 10 are animated films that were made for kids, and those are terrifying. Whatever. It's just, this movie didn't really do it for me, and I think if I hadn't have read the book, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. And that makes me really sad, because it has all of the aspects of a good film, but just personally, it just doesn't sit well with me. Dumbo is his most recent film endeavor. I'm pretty sure it came out in 2019. I'm not aware of anything else that he's made between then and now. So in this movie, we got Ava Green, we got Danny DeVito, we got Michael Keaton, we have Colin Farrell, who, by the way, I'm a sucker for an Irish accent, because god dang that man. That's not what we're here to talk about. Bases is premise around the family and like the 2 children and their dad, which I kind of get why they did that, because the original animation, you kind of can't show a lot of that today because it's not really the nicest. And I also get that a remake is not necessarily supposed to be just like word for word, frame for frame of whatever the original source material was, because that's not really fair to it. You should be able to kind of take some sort of creative liberties, which he usually does, because he's done a lot of remakes. But this one just, it was so long, you guys. It was so, and I don't even think it is that long. Hold on, let me. Okay, I lied. It is a little long. It's 112 minutes. It's almost 2 hours. Yeah, it was too long, and it didn't really need to be that long. It's a movie about an elephant. I went and saw this movie with a friend of mine named Stephanie, and you should totally go follow her on Instagram because she's one of the most creative people I think I've ever met on the face of this planet. One of her gripes about this movie was that she feels like there was too many side characters, and I fully agree with that statement. It was I mean, we're harping on Ava Green again, and it's going to come up later in this list, so be prepared. I just didn't feel like any of the side people who weren't like Colin Farrell and his kids, or Danny DeVito, who's the villain, were kind of necessary. Like, the whole movie could have been those four and Dumbo, and it would have been fine. Because I was hyped that Ava Green was in this movie, which was one of the reasons why I wanted to go see it, and she was hyped about it too. And then I'm sure if you tallied up her entire screen time, I'm sure it equates to Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. You know how they're like, if you count up all his screen time, it's only like 15 minutes. I think that's the same. Like, they scatter her around this movie so much that you feel like she's in the whole thing, but if you really think about it and step back from it and remove her stuff from the main picture, she's in it for like no more than 10 minutes probably, and that's really sad because I watched interviews. She's an acrobat in this movie, and I've seen interviews with her where she's talking about where she had to do like acrobatic training, which I'm sure isn't a thing that, you know, takes 2 days to learn, and she did all that work to literally like do one stunt and then kind of peace out for the rest of the movie and just be kind of like a person in the background, which is so sad to me. So another thing Stephanie said was that the plot was horribly predictable, and I agree with that. And I get that it's a kids movie, but kids are a lot smarter than you give them credit for, and you don't really need to spell everything out for them or make everything super obvious for them to enjoy a film. I think some of the greatest Disney movies are the most complex in their storytelling, and or just any kids movie, not just because Disney's not the only company that makes kids movies, Victoria. Like that, and kids are very, very smart, and you don't have to necessarily write out the entire plot for them and hand it to them on a paper. Like, they can be a little super sleuths and figure it out, and surprises at the end are not only beneficial for kids in their minds, but it's also beneficial for the adults who have to sit through kids movies, because who do you think's taking them to these things? It's their parents, it's their older siblings, it's people who have a vast age gap between them who aren't necessarily into kids movies. So whenever there's a children's movie marketed to kids that can be enjoyed by both an adult and a child is when it wins. And this one missed the ball on that entirely. I think they were solely like, how can we make toys and fill shops at Disney World and also kind of sort of maybe have a movie too that's somewhat cohesive but not really that complicated. Dumbo. But the elephant was really cute. If I have to say something really nice about this movie, the elephant was actually really, really stinking cute. He was so cute, guys. The cutest little CGI animal. CGI Simba is being given a run for his money. But sadly, this movie did not make the cut for my top 10. But thank you, Stephanie, I'm sorry I made you relive that memory of that not that great movie, but thanks for the time that we spent together. So all the movies that I have for 18 to 12 are all what I like to call my neutral category, because they're all films that I am just okay with. I have no strong negative or positive opinions about literally any of them. They're just there. I've seen all of them at least once, some of them even 2 or 3 times, and they just didn't really do anything spectacular for me, but I personally understand why all of these movies are some people's favorites and cult classics, because I feel like with a lot of his earlier movies, like pre-2000s, he really made a lot of films that didn't get famous until like a few years later. Like at the time when they came out, people were just kind of like, what is this? And then give it a few years, let it marinate in the sauce, in the film industry sauce, and then come back out again on DVD or special release or something, and then people go crazy for it. So I fully understand why these movies are good. I fully understand why a lot of them have very high ratings from critics and audiences, but they just personally didn't really do anything for me. But they're good movies. So I'm going to list them off really quickly. We have Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which, by the way, I grew up watching the show because my local library, for some reason, had every season of Pee-wee's Playhouse on DVD. I don't know why that was the TV show that they picked, but they did. So I think I have seen every episode of Pee-wee's Playhouse. So I have a great appreciation for the Pee-wee universe, and I think that show is one of the reasons why I like weird stuff. Because have you ever actually watched, like, if you sit back and you look at that show is an acid trip. I've never done acid, but I assume that that's what it is, and if it is, I don't really want it. Number 17, we have Planet of the Apes. Number 16, we have Mars Attacks. Number 15, we have Ed Wood. Number 14, we have Sleepy Hollow. Number 13, we have Big Fish. And number 12, we have Batman. Originally cut my top 10 movies first and then filled all of these other movies that were left out of that into my, like, other ones, but into all of the ones up to 20. But there's a film in this list that didn't make my top 10 that I fully am aware should have been in my top 10 and is not, solely based on me being a scared child and watching this movie, and my adult brain is not letting me forget about that. And because my number 11 should be in the top 10 by everybody else's standards, and I really want it to be in my top 10, and I don't understand why it's not. And my number 11 is Beetlejuice. I don't think I'm okay, y'all. I really don't. Like, I really wonder about how my brain works, and it baffles me, and I'm the one that has to live in it 24/7. Beetlejuice has literally all the players in it that you could want for a good movie. You got Michael Keaton, you got Winona Ryder, you got Gina Davis, you got Catherine O'Hara. It's all there. Everything is there. Every aspect of all the ones that are in my top 10 has to be a great Tim Burton film. It has a kooky story. It has a kooky set. It has literally every, like, person that's in a Tim Burton movie that's been successful in it. And I still can't put it in my top 10. And that makes me mad. Like, I'm mad at myself for not doing that. We got Danny Elfman coming in hot with a banging score. That's another one of the reasons why I don't understand why I don't love this movie, because the music is phenomenal. And anything with Gina Davis in it is immediately gonna be something that I love, because she's fantastic. Thelma and Louise rocks it. One of my favorite movies. This is The Breakfast Club. I always think that Gina Davis is Molly Ringwald, and Molly Ringwald is Gina Davis, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they both have red hair and were kind of popular during the same time, but this is not Gina Davis, Victoria. This is Molly Ringwald. Get it right. This movie did sincerely terrify me as a child, but my brain as a kid was also very selective about what it wanted to be afraid of, because I saw a lot of the movies that I'm about to list off in my top 10 when I was a child, and they didn't scare me. But this one did. I mean, this movie is a little gross, and it is under the horror category, so maybe I do have a little bit of an excuse. But I did rewatch it for this video, and I still couldn't bring myself to put it into the top 10, because all of these other movies that I put before it, for me personally, mean more to me artistically than Beetlejuice does. I think y'all just watch me have an epiphany. I think that's what I'm basing this list off of, is which of these films spark my little creativity section of my brain and make it go from 0 to 100 by the end of the movie. I think that's what it is. And this movie did a little bit for me, but I think I was so focused on being slightly terrified by it that I couldn't really get past it and really latch onto it for what it was. And that makes me so sad. So I'm going to rewatch it again. Probably after I finish doing this, I'm going to rewatch it because I want to be able to love it as much as everybody else does. And that's not to say I don't love it, because if I didn't, I would have put it right up there with Dumbo and Miss Peregrine. Good Lord. So going forward, I wish I could have clarified that at the beginning. This list is mainly my creative opinions about movies, and I want it to be in the top 10, which is why I think I'm going to call this a top 11 and let that be like an honorary mention, because it deserves it. I fully get it. What's wrong with me, y'all? I don't know. What do you think, Keanu? What do you think is wrong with me? Same. Fully agree. Thank you, man, many words. Part of this video, and this is the reason why I wanted to make it, because I don't really like talking about things that I hate. I obviously, and hate, hate is a very strong word. I don't use hate very often in my life. I save it for very specific things, and I can only think of maybe 2 things that fall under that hate category. So these are just movies that I personally don't connect with very much. That's a good word. Connect. I don't connect with all of the movies that I personally just listed before my top 10. But this top 10 was the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, because I wanted to shower my love of his films and the top 10 that I love of his across the universe, or the internet verse. So let's get into my top 10. We made it. We got here. We had to go through the negativity valley, and we finally made it to the top 10 Tim Burton castle. Let's get into it. Topping off my number 10, we have Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I know there's a lot of people that don't like this movie, but I'm not one of those people. We have a stellar cast, including baby Norman Bates. Because, well, I know his real name. His real name's Freddie Highmore, but I call him Norman Bates because, let's face it, that's the role that I think a lot of people know him for at this point. But before he was a psychopathic killer, he was a little English boy going to a chocolate factory. I remember watching this movie as a kid and fully just kind of being in awe of how movies were just allowed to be so weird. Because I feel like Disney movies, when you're a child, that's pretty much all you watch, and it kind of paints this little perfect not recent Disney movies, but the older ones. Y'all know which ones I'm talking about. The older animated ones, you kind of expect everything to be very perfect, and you know, this movie has very flawed characters in it. You know, each of these parents and their child counterpart who win a ticket to go to this factory have some sort of, like, issue, you know? Like, Veruca and her dad are very greedy, and they're kind of really annoying rich people, and then, you know, oh god, what's the girl with the butt? Anna Sophia Robb? No, that's the girl. Who's the one that blows up? You're turning Violet. Violet. Oh my god. Violet is very competitive, and she kind of uses that in her life in a way that's not very healthy. And, you know, Mike TV is just a very annoying brat of a child who doesn't listen to anybody, and his poor mother and father have to put up with that 24/7. And then you have sweet little Charlie, who's just so happy to be there. And Freddie Highmore did that phenomenally. He was just such a pure little Charlie, and I loved watching it. And I still enjoy watching it. Every time I catch this movie on TV, I have to watch it. It's like, even no matter if it's at the beginning or the middle or the end, I'm gonna watch it. From this film, other than it just being the craziest, wildest, at times grossest ride of all time, is that, you know, you should be grateful for the things that you're given in your life and the things that you have and the people that surround you, and as long as you're with those people, then all the kind of external things don't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter how many awards you have, how much money you have. At the end of the day, it's about family, and then there's also little lessons of forgiveness, and I think each of the kids, their sole purpose is to teach you a lesson, and it truly is like a book. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it came from a book, and you can tell that because it's set up very book-like, you know, and each chapter, each child's, like, story is a chapter as you go through this factory, and it's just really beautiful, and it's beautifully done, and I personally, I don't think a lot of people will agree with this, but I think it pays homage to the original without it being a carbon copy. It fully stands on its own as its own movie and its own carnation of the thing and that everybody has grown up with and loved. And I get why people don't really vibe with it all too much because, you know, you really want to love the original because Gene Wilder, he was great. But I think just everybody in this movie brought something totally different than the originals, and that's good, you know, because if we wanted to see the original movie again, just watch the original. Like, there's no point. So I feel like a remake's purpose is to not copy, but to take the essence of it, which I think this film did beautifully, which is why I have it at the top of my top 10. A little bit of a twist, I think. We have the film Big Eyes. So for people who've never seen this movie, which is a lot, because every time I ask someone if they've seen this, everyone in my life has said, no, what is that? So it's the retelling of a true story, which is about an artist named Margaret Keane who made art. She got famous for her art of drawing people with really, really big eyes, hence the title, Big Eyes. The movie, basically we have Amy Adams who plays Margaret Keane wonderfully, and she meets this man who is played, or this man's name is Walter. She meets Walter, who's played by Christoph Waltz, and he says, I'm going to make you famous, I'm going to make you a household name, you're going to have so much money for you and your daughter, and he ends up plagiarizing her work straight up and just putting his own name on it and taking credit for it for many years. And it makes me sad that not a whole lot of people have seen this movie because it came out in 2014, I want to say the tail end of 2014, and then it was really, really relevant in the awards show season of 2015. Amy Adams got a Golden Globe for it. I think everybody who was a part of the film in every aspect got nominated for something in Oscars and Golden Globes and all the things that movies get. And then after that, it just kind of disappeared into the Netflix catalog. Like, nobody talks about it, and that makes me really sad. Truly love this movie is because it's such a departure for Tim Burton. I didn't even know it was by him when I watched the trailer for it. I just saw Christoph Waltz and Amy Adams and said I want to see this movie because I'm one of those people that if an actor I really like is in something, I'm just gonna throw my money at it. It doesn't matter if I know the context or not. I'm gonna go see it. Chris Evans, he has all my money. Tom Hiddleston, all my money. Julia Roberts, Sandra Bullock, they can take all of my money. Keanu, you can take all of my money. Opening credits, I was shocked to see that his name was the director for this film. It was crazy because it looks so different. It's so bright and colorful. It's visually not really shot like any of his other movies. I feel like he's a fan of a lot of different types of camera angles, and you know, he uses a lot of color balancing with dark colors to make certain shots work for him. And this movie just felt like a normal movie, which to me, Tim Burton films are not normal because you can usually tell right away that it was directed by him. But the fact that I had to wait until the credits showed to be able to be like, oh, that he did this, it shows that, you know, he really went above and beyond to make sure that this wasn't a Tim Burton film. If you add too many of his signature stylings, I think it takes away from the woman's story, and out of respect, I think he really wanted to do this. But he took a few creative liberties, especially when there are parts in this movie where she looks at some of the paintings that have the big eyes and they start moving around and they become animated. So he threw his little touches here and there. But for the most part, this is just a normal true story film. And I love that because I feel like every director has some sort of an outlier film where you're just like, wait, they were associated with that? And this is his outlier film. And to me, I just really appreciate that he didn't let his kind of his branding, I guess you could say, take over this woman's life story, and he really wanted to keep it true to heart out of respect for her, I think, and just for the sake of the film, because I think if he had added all of his Tim Burton isms to it, it would have been a completely different tone. Acting from both Amy Adams and Christoph Waltz is stellar in the film. You know, you really hate Walter, which is what you're supposed to do. Side note, I think Christoph Waltz has made an entire career out of playing mainly villains, and I'm kind of here for it. I'm trying to think of a film that he's made in the past, 15, 20 years where he wasn't the one that we're supposed to be hating. The story was simple, but it was so effective, and I feel like if it would have been directed the wrong way, it could have easily been kind of monotonous a little bit and slow, but the pacing of this movie was so well done. It was phenomenal, and it was so well done that I remember it being over and being like, that's it? I thought it was gonna be way longer than that, and that's the sign for me of a good movie, is when if you can forget that you're watching a movie, and then by the time it's over, you either don't want it to be over, or you're shocked that it was over that quickly, then it doesn't always necessarily equate to being a good film. But if you can get lost in the world that they're creating for you, or the story that they're putting you into, everything that's external around you isn't really important, and you're just fully focused. Because getting people to focus on something for longer than 5 minutes now, or the length of a YouTube video or a Snapchat video, is very difficult. And when you can do that, especially with a storyline that's of a true story like this, that to me tells me that, this is a great movie. I highly suggest you see it for the good acting, for the phenomenal costuming, for the great setting that they create for you, and just in general to educate yourself on this woman's story, because her story is crazy and sad and happy all at the same time. Musicals, if you hate musicals, I'm so sorry. Right, we got Sweeny Todd, and it was by Stephen Sondheim, and if you're a musical theater person, you know this information, but if you're not, he is a very famous theater composer, and he's made a lot of really profound shows, and a lot of shows that have been turned into movies, like Into the Woods. He did that one too. He's also done Company, and a slew of other things, Assassins, and a slew of other things that I'm forgetting right now in the moment. So you know how a lot of musicals are very jovial and happy and bright, and we're gonna sing through our life problems, and we're gonna overcome struggle, and then it's all gonna be happily ever after at the end. Okay, so imagine that, but instead, everyone is sad, everyone hates their life, it's raining 24/7, it's Alaska in the sense that it's dark even during the daytime, and there's also a man who cuts hair who also doubles as a Dexter-like serial killer. You got Sweeny Todd. So this movie yet again is coming through with the casting. We have Johnny Depp as our Sweeny Todd. We have Helena Bonham Carter as our Miss Lovett. You throw some Alan Rickman in there too. This film, from movie people, from theater people, and the consensus that I have is that I feel like people who are less into musicals can enjoy this movie for what it is. But me being the person that is equally into theater and musicals, I have come here to set the record straight and say that this movie is a cinematic masterpiece. This movie is just dank and dark and creepy and a little bit gross, and I love it. That's what I'm here for. It's your classic live action Tim Burton movie. Favorite things about this movie is the way Helena Bonham Carter plays Miss Lovett. Because I've seen a bunch of other Miss Lovetts, Patti LuPone, Emma Thompson played her, Angela Lansbury, and they're all incredible. All of y'all are the queens, and they each of them played her very differently. You know, they're very distinct Miss Lovetts. I feel like the theme between all of them, if you had to draw one, would be that Miss Lovett's very kind of bolsterous and ballsy, and she's very loud and kind of just like stampedes into a room and just makes her presence known. And Helena, on the other hand, I think took it and made it completely differently in the sense that she plays Miss Lovett in this like a love-struck teenager, if that makes any sense. She's just in awe of Sweeny Todd the entire time and will do anything to please him. And I think that personality that she chose for Miss Lovett matches her voice perfectly, which is why it didn't bug me. I know a lot of people have problems with the way that she sounded in the movie, but I think she sounds very cute and kind of, like I said, like a teenager who's in love, which is perfect for the sound of her voice matched the way that she played the character perfectly. Just like the sound of all those other actresses' voices, like Angela Lansbury, Patti LuPone, Emma Thompson, they all have very loud, present voices. So they play her to match that, which is great. But Helena doesn't really have a belting voice. She has a very kind of ethereal, almost Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas voice. And which is fine, but you can't really be stomping around yelling at people and being loud and whipping around your dough roller and then go from forte volume to piano in 5 seconds when you start singing. It just doesn't really make any sense and there's no connection. So I do appreciate, I don't know if she did that consciously or if it's just what she decided to do randomly, but either way it worked really well for me, and I hope what I just said made sense. But her voice and her acting choices fit together perfectly, and I really do appreciate that. And I thought for Miss Lovett was very cute and kind of spacey and airy, and it was a different take on the character, which I appreciated seeing. I'm not really like delving too deep into Johnny Depp's performances because I think everybody knows that he kills it every time he's in a Tim Burton film, and he's, I think, in almost all of the ones that I'm about to talk about. I'm just trying to give other people who were in these movies their credit as well, because I feel like they don't get talked about enough. But yeah, so just know, I'm not leaving him out on purpose. Well, no, I am. I'm leaving him out on purpose. I'm just not doing it in a malicious way. I'm doing it just to evenly give other people a chance to have the spotlight for a second. Number 8, and it's a little bit higher than Big Eyes and Charlie and Chocolate Factory, is because it meshes the two things mediums of art that I love together so well, and which is musicals and film, and it's one of the better done musicals to film transitions, because there's a lot of times where I feel like it doesn't work very well, and you can tell that they're trying too hard to still appease musical theater people, but also make sure film people are engaged. But I feel like with this show in particular, because in the theater world, I feel like it's such a different show than most musicals are to begin with. So when you want to transfer it into a film, I think it becomes so much easier because it's a very cinematic musical anyway. So the transition wasn't very difficult, and for me, it was just so beautifully done. I know I'm probably going to say that about all of my top 10s, but I just severely love all of these movies that I'm about to talk about. They got the right people for the right parts. I didn't think there was anyone in this movie who was miscast. You could argue that, some of the voices weren't as strong, and that's something that kind of bothers me when musicals get turned into movies. I get, again, it's all about money, so if you put a big name in it, then more people are going to come and see your movie. But I would appreciated it if they had put more musical theater-y people into it, But at the same time, all these people, their voices were there. They might not be as strong of belters as musical theater people are, but they acted their butts off in this movie. Every single person that was on the screen, even the people who were in the background who had no lines. Like, that's why can I just, like, real quick, side note, this movie just made me realize this. Being an actor is so freaking cool. Like, you get to wake up every day and go, one, do something different, which is my dream, and two, you just get to go to work and pretend to be like a demon barber of Fleet Street and carry around a knife and just slice and dice all day long. Like, that's your job. You get to go to work and you get to do that. Actors are so cool, man. On to number 7, and this movie is probably too high up on my list and for the scores because it has treacherous Rotten Tomato scores from both critics and audiences, is Dark Shadows. This movie, basic plot, we got Barnabas, he's a vampire back in the olden times, and he gets cursed by this witch, and he basically ends up being buried for eternity. So then we fast forward to the 70s where there's construction going on in the place where he was buried, because it's a town now, and these construction workers dig him up, and now it's this vampire from like the early 1800s trying to learn to live in the 70s. And it's so cheesy, you guys. The cheese is immaculate in this movie. The cheese plate is fire. We got Gouda, we got cheddar, we got Swiss, we got Munster. It's all there, and I'm here for it. If you know anything about me, you know that I love a good cheesy movie. And I love a good overacted movie when it's done well. And in my opinion, this movie is done well. And I know that those percentages on Rotten Tomatoes probably make me look like I'm a crazy person, but at this point, I think for the past however many minutes I'm gonna be talking for to you guys, you've already come to the conclusion that I'm crazy, so I might as well solidify it with this decision that I'm making right now to make this my number 7. Well, this movie stars Johnny Depp, we got Ava Green, we got Helena Bonham Carter, we got Michelle Pfeiffer, we got Chloe Grace Moretz, we got a bunch of other really cool people. And if you don't know, this movie is based off of a soap opera that I believe came out in the 60s? Yes, 1966 to 1971, and it had over 1,000 episodes. And people's complaints about this movie was the overacting and the kind of gravitas of all of it is very strange, because if you've ever watched a soap opera, that's the most overacting you could possibly do in your life. And that's the whole shtick of a soap opera. So, for me, I don't really understand what the problem is, because they're doing everything you would do in a soap opera, but in a movie. And the set design for this film is incredible. They got old cars, they got, the fashion is on point, and the color grading of everybody's clothing is chaotic, but in the best way possible. So that in and of itself is why this movie is so high up on this list, just because of the external factors. As far as the performances in this movie, they are some of the most over-the-top performances I have ever seen in my life, and I'm absolutely here for it. Ava Green's performance in this movie is nothing less than stellar. She is acting for her life, and I'm here for it. She plays the witch that curses Johnny Depp's character in the beginning, and she was phenomenal in this. Her costumes are all stunning, and she truly is terrifying in this. Like, if I ran up on Angelique on the streets, I'd probably cross the street and run the other direction. I'm not trying to mess with this lady. She's out here taking names, she's taking coin, and she ain't gonna let anybody stop her. And we love a strong female presence in a movie. Michelle Pfeiffer is in this movie, who's another one of my queens, and she kills it. Literally and figuratively kills it. She's like the matriarch of this family. She runs everything. The family consists of her and her brother and her 2 kids, who are the boy and the girl, and they have a psychiatrist that lives in the house that treats the little boy for his belief in ghosts. Um, and that's played by Helena Bonham Carter. She plays the psychiatrist. And her part in this movie is relatively small, as is Michelle Pfeiffer's part. They both are. I compare them a lot in this movie, where when they are on screen, you are fully focused on them. And, you know, the ability to be able to do that in a movie that's so kooky crazy to begin with, and everything going on around you is insane, and you got a vampire, and you got this witch lady, and your kid believes in ghosts, and then your teenage daughter is a werewolf, and then you got a psychiatrist that lives in the house. Like, it's all crazy. It's all insane. But they steal the scenes when they're in the scenes. Like, they just do, and it makes me so happy. And they just manage to pull focus and just steal the scenes. They did it through the entire thing. And, you know, like, Michelle Pfeiffer plays a mom. Like, a lot of mom roles are either really important in movies, or they aren't elaborated enough and you don't really care about them. There's not really an in-between for moms. But she makes her presence known when she's on camera, and she does that in not just this movie, but every movie. So I feel like making sure that the smaller cast members and like the smaller roles in this movie were filled with people like that, which is what they did, is why this movie is so high up on my list. They made sure that everybody knew what the heck they were doing and what their little piece of this weird freaking puzzle was. And that's why, to me, it's such a good movie. Also, side note, the love scene in this movie is the most ridiculous thing I've ever laid my eyes on. It's like they took 2 planks of wood, put them in harnesses, and just flung them around the room. There's absolutely no movement. It's the most still thing I've ever watched in my life, and I would watch it every day for the rest of my life if I had to. Mixing the 70s vibe with this strong cast and already strong source material, because the soap opera in and of itself is the most dramatic, crazy thing that I've ever seen in my life. When you roll all that together, you have a fantastic, not just Tim Burton movie, but you have a fantastic movie in general. And it's just one of those movies you can put on and just have a good time. You don't really have to think too much about what the message of it was, and that's really not, I don't think there's a message for every film, but I don't think that that's why it was being made. I think it was made to just make a fun vampire 70s movie, because who doesn't want that? I don't know. If you don't want that, it's fine, but like, I want that, and I got that from this movie, and it makes me so sad that these scores and people hate it so much, because it's genuinely one of the loves of my life, and I would put it up higher on this list if it weren't for the movies that are gonna come next that I feel like are more important for me to talk about. Alright, coming in at number 6, we got Edward Scissorhands. And fun fact about this movie, before I delve into why I love it so much, this movie was shot in Florida, but in cities that I either currently reside in or have resided in. They shot it in Tampa, they shot it in where else did they say they shot this? Yeah, Tampa, Lutz, Lakeland, Dade City. That's wild to me, because I currently live in one of those places, and it's just so cool when things like that happen so locally and you had no idea. I know it happened in like the early 90s and I wasn't even born yet, but it's just so cool when I read things like that. I get so excited because it's like, oh, they used my city. I live here. Like, I could drive to all of these sets. I'm sure they don't look like this. I'm sure they made them up for a certain, but I'm assuming the houses that they used for the exterior are probably still there. They just don't look like they did in the movie. But that was really cool to me. Random fun fact, but let's just get into why I love this movie so much. So, basic premise of this, if you have, for some reason, have never seen it before, it's basically this mad scientist makes a creation, and the scientist dies before he can finish it. So his creation man now has scissors and knives for his hands, and this Avon lady comes to the door and finds him and brings him back to her house, and he ends up falling in love with her daughter, and he has to kind of learn to live amongst all of these suburban women and people. And it's wholesome, and also wacky at the same time. It's a perfect balance of those two. And this film is awesome. I love it. And I feel like when actors have so much makeup on and they have they just look like different creatures, it can kind of be hard to form a connection with them because they don't look like people, so it's a little bit harder to see them for them, but they clearly worked on this a lot, and you can tell because it's just so sweet when, she's attempting to try and learn things about this terrifying creature man, and he's trying really hard not to slice and dice all the time, which is kind of what he was made to do. But that's one of my favorite things about this movie, and also just the message of this film. If you really think about it, he's being dropped into this suburb of really ritzy people who don't like different. All the houses look the same, all the women do their hair relatively the same, and now there's this new crazy creature in town, and not only does everybody else in the town have to learn to accept differences, but the person who is different really has to figure out what their place is going to be in this new kind of society that they're trying to make a living in, because he lived in a house by himself for many years after his dude died. He was alone on that hill, and now all of a sudden he's thrust into a land of people who all don't really like him that much. And so it just makes me happy when you see him doing the haircuts and the hedge mazes and all that, because he's making an attempt to try and find his purpose. He is a Lady Gaga in a room full of Karens, he's gonna stick out. And for me, that's what this movie is. It's just finding who you want to be in where you're currently located or going to be located, or just who you want to be in the world in general. What kind of impact do you want to make? Why do you think that you're here? And it doesn't matter if everybody else around you thinks that you should be a certain thing or puts these certain labels on you. It's whatever you're rocking with. And it was lovely to see that told in such a whimsical kind of fairy tale-esque story, because I think putting those types of topics and packaging them up in that sort of way makes it a lot easier for audiences to process such kind of life-altering messages that you're throwing at them. Instead of just, shoving all this dark material into their heads, you can really give it to them in little pieces and throw some comedy in there to kind of make it more palatable. And that's why I love this movie. It's the message of it that really, really sticks with me. And yeah, so that's why that movie is gonna be my number 6. Number 6, I was correct. 5, we're taking a little bit of a tonal shift because that last one got way too serious, but we're rolling with it. Alice in Wonderland, the 2010 one, not the animated one, because I don't think Tim Burton was even born when that movie came out. Instead of her being a little kid, she's now older. I think she might be a late teen, early adulthood, and she's basically betrothed to this man, and she runs off from the wedding ceremony, or the practice of the wedding ceremony, and she falls down the rabbit hole again. But she only remembers Wonderland through her dreams. She doesn't fully recall ever being there, but she was. She visited when she was little. That's what I was trying to get at. She visited when she was 7, so the events from the past Alice in Wonderland stories in the animated film are still relevant. She remembers all of it, but she hasn't been there in a long time, so she can't really remember if it was real or not. So during this whole I'm gonna be betrothed to this man, she runs off and she falls down the rabbit hole, and she basically comes into contact with all the Wonderland people that we've known and are true and dear to our hearts. We got the Mad Hatter, Caterpillar, Cheshire Cat, all of them, and not the evil queen. There's so many Disney villains. The Red Queen. We got the Red Queen, and she basically has to follow her destiny to end the Red Queen's I guess, dictatorship over in the entire Wonderland. Mia Wasikowski? Wasikowski. I'm gonna put her name on the screen because I don't want to I don't want to slander this girl's name. She plays Alice. She does a phenomenal job, and I truly think she captures the essence of what an older Alice would be. You know, she's still very childlike and full of light and fun, but she's also a little bit more serious, which, you know, as you get older, you tend to get a little bit more serious, just different degrees of serious. So she's not so adult to the point where you're like, this is a different person, but she just has little tinges of adultness in her, and I really appreciated that. The way is one of my favorite parts of this movie, and she's also one of my favorite actors. I have a lot of favorite actors. It's just, there's so many good, talented people in the industry, and I'm so happy that I'm alive when all of them are doing their thing now and making all this content, because I just feel so honored to be able to share the earth with all of these talented actors, and hopefully one day I'll get to work with a lot of these talented actors. And I'm also happy that Tim Burton decides that he wants to work with all of my favorite actors, because it makes watching his films 10 times more enjoyable for me when I see people on there that I absolutely love. The White Queen, she's not a witch. I keep wanting to call her the White Witch. She's the White Queen. And she's very eerie in this movie. And I love it because I feel like everybody, when they think of Anne Hathaway, they think of Princess Diaries, which is fine. But it's just she's just different. She's just so different when it's her own thing, and it's such a departure for her. Actors that I love who aren't normally in his movies have to step into his crazy world and figure out what kind of kooky they want to be. And she did a phenomenal job at that. Her character is very regal and very elegant in the way that she carries herself, because she is a queen, and she's the good queen because her sister is the Red Queen and is evil. But there are just times where she does things, or she like looks at the camera a certain way, or she like says little flippant things that it's like scary low-key. Like, she's kind of scary, but in a good way, and not in like a I'm afraid she's gonna hurt me way, but in a like I don't know what she's gonna do, and I also don't know what she's up to. But and then again, we got Helena Bonham Carter, we got Johnny Depp, the staples of a Tim Burton film. To be quite honest, if I was director and my husband was an actor, I would throw him in all of my movies too. Like, he would be in every single one of my movies, even if it wasn't a lead part, even if he was just an extra. I'd be like, you are married to me, so you're contractually obligated to be in every film that I do, and that's on marriage. This movie had a budget of $200 million, and I'm pretty sure that $100 million of that was to CGI Helena Bonham Carter's head in every frame that she was in. Was that it wasn't cohesive enough. Have you never read Alice in Wonderland? It's the least cohesive Disney movie that's ever been made. There's no Alice in Wonderland, really, the original doesn't have much plot to be had. It's mainly a little girl who doesn't want to do her schoolwork, so she goes and follows a rabbit and then meets all these kooky characters and then comes home. Like, that's it. There really isn't that much cohesion, and I think the fact that they made her older and added a goal for her to at least achieve, which is to defeat the Queen and to kill the Jabberwocky, that's what I think gave this movie some sort of cohesion. Because if they had just left it like the original, the entire thing would have literally just been a live-action version of the animated. And like I said before when I was talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, if we wanted to just see the original again, why wouldn't you just go back and watch the original? So I'm totally fine with the so-called lack of cohesion, even though I think they completely added cohesion by giving her some sort of mission to accomplish. We're being completely honest with ourselves. Like, who else was gonna make a live-action Alice in Wonderland other than Tim Burton? Like, it's the wackiest movie that's ever been created on the animated movie. That movie's wild. If you've never, but like, what other director would have been just, who else? Like, who else was gonna do it? So I think it was a terrific choice on Disney's part to have him direct this film because there was literally nobody else who was gonna do that. Can y'all imagine if Alice in Wonderland was directed by like I don't know, who's like a, oh my god, David Fincher, Alice in Wonderland. That would be, actually I kind of want to see that. How much money can I pay David Fincher to make me an Alice in Wonderland film? How much money can I do? Who else would be weird? J.J. Abrams. The whole movie would just, the entire time she's falling down the rabbit hole, it's just her being blinded by lens flares that are different colors. Guillermo del Toro, Alice in Wonderland. I want to see it. It would be real messed up and creepy, just like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Does a great job at referencing the original and paying homage to it without being a carbon copy of it. And it makes you feel like you're watching a new story, even though a lot of the key elements are exactly the same. Which is why, and also I'm a sucker for Alice in Wonderland. Like I have, where is it? Oh. I have the book that I bought for $5 at, can you even see that? I bought the book for $5 at a CVS because I'll buy anything you put Alice in Wonderland on because it's, oh, and I have the Mad Hatter. He's up here. He's looking svelte. He's looking fly. He's looking cool. And it's his time to shine because Alice in Wonderland rocks. Ever so famous, and I think the most recognizable Tim Burton movie among everybody, even if you're not a cinema freak like I am. Nightmare Before Christmas! Never seen it. Basic premise. We got long, spindly boy, Jack Skellington. He's like the king of Halloween. Each, like, holiday has their own, like, land, and he's the king of Halloween town land. And he is getting bored with scaring people and doing the same thing every year. So he accidentally stumbles upon Christmas and learns about what Christmas is. So his new goal in this movie is to take over Christmas from Santa Claus and now be Santa Claus. And dear Lord, is it, I'm just, they're art, dude. Like, they're just art. I don't know how else to describe it, but they're just art. They're just art. And the amount of I put down how many frames this movie took. 109,440 frames went into making this movie. I don't know how long that took them to do. I couldn't find that information. It's probably available on the internet. But that blows my mind. Stop motion animation films, specifically like claymation ones, are art. It's just art. Like, I don't know how else to say it. This movie is an absolute masterpiece. And I was very tempted to put this movie as my number one, but I had to give it to number 4 because there's some 3 movies before it that just are closer to my heart. But when I was a child, if you had asked child Victoria what her favorite movie was, she would have told you Nightmare Before Christmas. The most imaginative thing. Okay. I don't understand how he does it. How does he come up with this? Oh, also, side note, this is a movie he didn't direct. I fully understand that. But they put it on Wikipedia. I'm blaming Wikipedia. They put this under the, 20 movies that he's been a part of, major motion pictures. He wrote the movie. He came up with all the characters, so he might as well have directed. Y'all, how does he sit down and come up with all of this? Tim Burton, tell me how you do it. How are you this creative? I want to know. I just want to know. I just want to know. I just want to know. Dude, how? It's just a classic. And I couldn't not put it this high up on the list, because if I didn't, that would be absolute slander on Tim Burton's name, and I'm not trying to do that. It looks so different from any other Disney animation film, especially for at the time when it came out. I feel like it's such an outlier, and Tim Burton is very good at making outlier films. I feel like his whole career is outlier film, and this film does not sell that branding of him short. It would have just been fine with the scoring by Danny Elfman, just like the background instrumentals, but they came in with songs. There's songs in this. Jack has songs, Sally has a song. Sally's song is one of my favorite songs of all time. I listen to that when I'm emotional. It's so this movie's beautiful, y'all, and I can't even describe to you the impact that it has had on my life. And I know that's so dramatic because it's just a movie, but artistically, I mean to say, it was one of those movies that I saw when I was really young that made me fully aware of, like, oh, this is, movies can do this. This can be a movie, like, not all movies are just princesses and, you know, relationship rom-coms. You can make kooky, crazy art in a film and it be successful and be interesting and it not be something that people don't want to see. That's why this movie, I think, is so high up on my list, is because, and I know I didn't talk a whole lot about the performances and all that, because I think at this point everybody knows this movie's a classic, so I'm going to try not to harp on it too much. It just opened up a world of movies for me that I didn't know was possible. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And I'm thankful for Tim Burton, for his brain, for creating that and making sure that this happens. And this movie was the reason that I found out about this man. It's the reason that my years and years of hyping him up to everybody, this movie's the reason why that's happened. Why people in my life are probably sick of hearing about Tim Burton. But, yeah. So that's why Nightmare Before Christmas is number 4. And I'm so sad that I couldn't put it as number 1. But I'm going to stop rambling about this movie. And at number 3, 3 is my favorite number, and it's also one of my favorite movies on this list, is Frankenweenie. Oh my god, this movie is it's so quick and so sweet, and a basic premise of the story of Frankenstein, but told through the eyes of children, and it makes it 10 times cuter. We have a kid named Victor, and he has a dog named Sparky, and something happens to Sparky, and he has to resurrect him, so he figures out from his science teacher how he's going to go about doing that, and he uses electricity from a storm, like in the story Frankenstein, who are all from, like, different countries, which I thought was really cool, because I feel like animated movies feel like they can get away with being not as diverse because they're not real people. So it was nice to see some people with just, like, some different cultural backgrounds sprinkled in there, which was really lovely, and I hope that, you know, we can see a lot more of that going. This movie's in black and white, which is one of the main superficial reasons why I love this movie. Anytime a movie's in black and white, I'm already intrigued, because I feel like it can bump up the type of energy and atmosphere that you're trying to provide from, like, normal to, like, excellent. Because it was just it just made it feel like an old movie, and that you were watching an old movie, and I like that feeling. I like being transported to the past, and it just tonally adds a different vibe to the movie. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like if Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children was in black and white, I would have liked it more. See, that's the thing, because I live my life in color every day. So why do I need all my movies to be in color all the time? I'm not saying every movie should be in black and white, because there's some movies that don't. Like, Marvel movies don't need to be in a black and white. Maybe Captain America. But that's because that movie took place during when black and white was at its peak. But I would, it made this movie feel like an old TV show, which was awesome. Because I love watching that kind of stuff, and I think it's also because I grew up with my grandparents, so anytime a movie takes place in anywhere that's like 1970s or under, I'm fully on board for. It's a kid's movie that also knew what it was doing, in the sense of, I want to appeal to everybody and not just children. So there are jokes in this movie that anybody can get. You know, older people are going to get some of these jokes more than younger people, because there's jokes about older movies in this. You know, there's your simple slapstick jokes of people falling off things and things like that. It has a very good balance of comedy and heart, which I also appreciated, and that's what really stuck out to me about this movie. I was full on crying at the end of this, and I was like, it's a dog, Victoria. It's a kid and a dog. Why are you this upset? But it's just, the story is so simple, but it it just pulls at the basic heartstrings, I think, that all of us feel at some point in your life, about a boy and his dog. And that, to me, was such a sweet relationship to watch. And, you know, he wasn't just losing a dog. Everybody in this town had a pet that they had lost. They have a pet cemetery in this town. It was his best friend, because this kid was a loner, and he didn't really have any friends. And so, you know, when you lose your best friend, I'm sure anybody would want to bring him back, and he does, but there's also consequences for that. And when other people get a hold of the power that you have to bring other things back, then that also becomes a problem. And I think that they just did this so well. And the fact that it wasn't black and white, it was claymation, which is my favorite style, it was so well voice acted, and the visuals were incredible, and the story had so much heart. Those 5 little points that I just said make for a phenomenal film, which is why Frankenweenie comes in at my number 3 slot. Alright, we got a superhero movie on this list. We got Batman Returns at number 2. He returned in from being in the neutral category on my list, and now the second Tim Burton Batman movie has made it into my top 10. So this movie has Michael Keaton as Batman, we got Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and we got Danny DeVito again. Wow, maybe he works with the same actors. Now that I'm like saying this list out loud, I'm like, wow, I've said the same names for the past like 20 minutes. Thing I could have ever wanted in a Batman movie, if I'm gonna be real with you. I know that's a bold statement, but here's why. Batman movies have some of the kookiest villains. You know, you got the Joker, you got Harley Quinn, you got the Riddler, you got the Penguin. These are all villains that are more or less like glorified jesters, and they're silly. They're goofy. They're having a good time with being evil, you know? And I feel like with a lot of the most recent Batman films, they're too serious. So when you put a villain like, you know, Harley or the Joker in a very serious Batman movie, the vibes don't match, and the energy of it is off. It's just not there. So for me, seeing Tim Burton be able to take his Tim Burtonness and apply it to the goofy kind of cynicalness that is Batman villains, praise the Lord. Stylistic choices just fit so well with Batman comics, I think, and the story of Batman and the city of Gotham, because like I mentioned before, a lot of the newer movies are very serious, and I think that's why a lot of them lack ratings, and just also, you know, they're kind of boring. And so this one takes Batman and just keeps it at the level that it looks like. This movie, another epiphany. We're having a lot of epiphanies in this video. This movie is like you're watching a comic book. I feel like I'm watching a superhero movie, or like a comic book movie. I don't feel like I'm watching a serious film that's based on, you know, the actions and trials and tribulations of the Batman comics. Like, I feel like I'm watching a classic Batman cartoon or comic book, but in live action movie form. Batman, he's one of my favorite Batmans, I think. Yeah. He actually might be my favorite Batman. Is Michael Keaton my favorite Batman? Yeah, I think Michael Keaton might be my favorite Batman. Oh, he played my favorite Batman. I think he just has a good balance of being, you know, party man Bruce Wayne, and also being kind of a broken, mentally, like, disturbed person who had a rough childhood, and he walks that line very well, and he doesn't cross that line over into the other aspect too far. He stays relatively in the middle, which I really think is very well done on his part. Loved her in Dark Shadows, loved her in this. She was the reason why I watched this movie. I saw this movie much later in my life, thanks to my friend Jessica. Hi, Jess. She had it at her house, and she was like, "You've never seen this movie?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." So she made me watch it, and when she told me Michelle Pfeiffer was in it, I was like, "Okay, I have to see it." And now it's, not only is it in my top, like, 3 favorite Tim Burton films of all time, it's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time now. Like, that's how serious I am about this film, you guys. This movie is one of the loves of my life. Michelle Pfeiffer does fantastic. love her tonal shift that she makes between Secretary Selena Kyle and now Catwoman Selena Kyle. Like, she's two completely different people. I personally, side note, feel like I'm Selena Kyle, but the before. Like, I'm the troubled secretary with the frizzy hair. And I'm okay with that. But one day, who knows, I'll evolve into Catwoman. Probably not. Let's not get our hopes up. We got Danny DeVito as our penguin, who is disgusting in this movie. There are times where he's talking and just this, like, black goop is coming out of his mouth. It's the grossest thing I've ever seen, and I love it. He does so well as the penguin, and again, he's just deranged. I love how deranged and unhinged all of the people in this movie. They're different levels of unhinged, but they all complement each other's unhingedness so well. And like I said, I just keep going back to the point of it feels like you're watching a Batman comic. And that's what I want to feel when I watch a superhero movie, you know? I want to feel the essence of the stories that they came from. I don't want it to feel like it's some now serious, like, undertaking of these movies. It's just, superhero movies should be fun, and that's what Tim Burton really did. But it's not without, you know, feeling for these characters. He just didn't make a mindless, fun superhero movie. You feel sorry for Bruce and Selena. You feel sorry for the penguin that he got abandoned at such a young age. Like, you feel sorry and you feel emotions for all these characters, but at the same time you're down for the crazy ride that he provides you. And that's why this movie is my number 2. I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but hopefully I can trim it down to something less than 45 minutes, but who knows. We've made it to my number 1, and that is, drumroll please. I gotta put the mic down. We got Corpse Bride. Yes, Corpse Bride beat out Batman Returns. Yes, Corpse Bride beat out Nightmare Before Christmas. Yes, it beat out one of the greatest black and white movies to ever grace the face of this planet, Frankenweenie. It did it, and it did it with style, it did it with heart, and it did it with another spindly man. So this movie stars Johnny Depp. He is playing our main man, Victor, and Victor is being engaged to Victoria, who he low-key wants to marry, I think. I don't know if he's fully, I think he's more nervous about it than anything about messing it up, and which he does. He messes up his vows during the rehearsal, so he runs off into the forest to practice on his own, and he accidentally betroths himself to an undead woman dressed in a bride's costume. It's crazy. Like, if you thought I was obsessed with the voice acting and all the other ones that I talked about that were animated, you just wait about this one. I'm so good at finding voice actors to fit the characters. Like, you hear the actor without the visuals, and then you open your eyes and you're like, oh yeah, that character matches that voice totally, which I get is what all voice acting is, and you know, that's the director's job and the casting director is to find somebody to match this visual, which is, I guess, how most voice actors get cast in general. But he's just really good at it, because he's never casted a voice in a movie that I've seen where I'm like, that doesn't fit, that doesn't work. So he's 100% for that. He's totally done it, and he knocks it out of the park with this one again. Helena Bonham Carter's voice fits Emily, the bride, the dead chick, so well. It's just, she's just so, her voice is just so specific, and it fits all of his kookiness, which is why I'm assuming they were married and they worked together for so long. They're not married anymore. I am aware that they're not married anymore, which is very sad. It was a dark day for Victoria when she found that information out. But he's just so good at doing animation. If he only made stop motion animation movies for the rest of his career, I would be totally fine with that. This film's core message is really, or core messages, because it covers a lot of topics, is really why I love it so much. And the fact that they're able to kind of mask all of those serious topics, kind of like they did with one of the earlier movies that I talked about, where you can shove all these kind of like serious topics in people's faces, and really just make them think about it, but just animation makes that so much easier for people to handle and not be too upset about or get overworked up in their heads about, you know, because this movie touches on marrying for love and not for money, because that's what a lot of the people in this town want Victor to do. They want him to get married to certain people because it'll make their family name or their money go up, you know. And for Emily's side, she has to kind of say to herself, well, you know, this man's not marrying me for the right reasons. He's marrying me because I'm forcing him to, and not because he genuinely wants to be with me. And it's about, so that touches on selfishness, and, you know, it's not really all about you. It's sometimes about the bigger picture and making sure other people are happy in your lives. And also, it just touches on being able to death, the topic of death, which I think Tim Burton does so well, because a lot of his films are very macabre to begin with. And there's a beautiful scene in this film where a lot of the people from the underworld are being resurrected. Their ghosts are coming back, and they get to see, the people in this town get to see their dead relatives. So there's a part where like a husband and a wife are reunited, and there's somebody where their dog comes back, and it's all of the elements that went into this movie. You could clearly tell were a passion project, and everything was intentional. There wasn't a point in this movie where I felt like they didn't have a purpose for what was being shown to me on screen. And they were beautiful animation with a wonderfully voice acted cast, and also throw in some songs in there. And then you got Corpse Bride, which to me will probably always be, unless he comes out with something new, my favorite Tim Burton film of all time, because of just how it's just so beautiful. It's art. It's like a hour and a half, hour 45 piece of art that you watch, and that to me really just, that film just makes me so excited about hopefully one day to be a part of a project like that, or lend my voice to a project like that. And yeah, so that rounds off my list, y'all. We made, oh my god, we did it. We made it again. Don't know how long this whole life in one sitting, and I'm really tired. I don't know how some of y'all do it. How do y'all, some of y'all just be talking? I'm tired. I want to eat. I want to go to bed now. Thank you for sitting here watching me ramble about one of my favorite artistic people in the world. His movies truly do mean a lot to me, and they always have, and they always will. Because they're the reason that, you know, I want to do everything I can to be an actor and hopefully be a part of projects like this. And who knows, maybe one day I can look back on this when I am in a Tim Burton film and be like, I've accomplished a dream of mine. Again, if you watched this whole video and you've made it to the end, I sincerely appreciate it. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, and it just took me a lot longer than I had anticipated, because I actually genuinely wanted to go back and watch a lot of these movies to make sure that I wasn't just saying random stuff, and I wanted to solidify my opinions about each of these things. And yeah, let me know what some of y'all's favorite Tim Burton movies are, because I would love to know. And if any of the movies that I put in my like neutral category are a movie that you're really a fan of, I would love to know why. I love to know everybody's different opinions about movies. And yeah, so thank you for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and Snapchat. I'll put it on the screen, and I'll put it in the description if you feel so inclined to. And if you would like to subscribe, that would be really cool too. I don't know when the next video I will make will come out. It will hopefully be a little shorter than this, because I have a feeling this is going to be real long. But I really enjoyed making this video. I enjoyed making it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I was very nervous about doing this, but now that I've gotten it out of the way, I'm happy with it. I'm happy that I got to sit here and simp for Tim Burton and Danny Elfman for 2.5 hours. And yeah, so I will see you guys whenever I see you guys next, which I don't know when that will be because I'm trying to think of a topic. I might do Quentin Tarantino movies next because he only has 9. So that's going to be way hard for me to narrow that down. Dear God. Because I watched Hateful Eight the other night for the first time because I realized that was the only one of his movies I had never seen. And that like reignited the flame in me of loving Quentin Tarantino movies. So yeah, the next video might be Quentin Tarantino movies, but I would like to go back and watch all of them because it's been a while since I've seen all the Kill Bills. So I'm gonna probably do that. So just give me some time. It might be a month before the next video comes out, or it might be 2 weeks. Who knows? But thank you again for watching. My name's Victoria. I'm a chatty introvert. I like movies. See you next time.